Let's get right into it. Number 15. Marrying on a dare. Imagine for a second that you're 22. You're in Delaware. We don't know why, just go with it. You've had roughly 7 lemon drop shots, and your buddy Dave, who is objectively a terrible influence, points at a stranger across the bar and slurs, "I bet you $50 you won't marry them." In most of the civilized world, this is just the sad prelude to a restraining order. But in Delaware, it's the potential start of a lawsuit. That's because Delaware is one of the few precious places that legally recognizes marrying on a dare as a valid reason for an annulment. This isn't just some funny historical quirk, it strikes at the very heart of what a contract is. See, a marriage is a legal contract, and all contracts require a meeting of the minds, or what the smart robes call intent. You have to intend to be bound by the agreement. Most states, in their infinite wisdom, assume that if you went through the trouble of getting a license, finding an officiant and signing a piece of paper, you probably meant it. Delaware, bless its tiny corporate haven heart, looked at its population and apparently thought, no, we need to write this one down. Our people are that impulsive. This law implies that so many people in Delaware's history woke up with a pounding headache, a new spouse, and a pending bar tab that the state legislature had to collectively sigh and intervene. All right, Kyle, you don't have to stay married to Brenda from the bowling alley. We know Dave Triple Dog dared you. You're free to go. They literally had to legislate against hold my beer weddings. It's the legal equivalent of a get-out-of-jail-free card, but specifically for relationships founded on bad judgment and cheap tequila. Basically, Delaware is the only state that legally recognizes the defense of, "Your Honor, it just seemed really, really funny at the time." Number 14. The post-mortem I do. In most of the world, saying I do requires a few key ingredients: 2 consenting adults, a witness, and a debilitating, soul-crushing fear of dying alone. In France, however, they're a little more flexible on that consenting adults part. Specifically the part where they both have to be, breathing. Welcome to the world of posthumous marriage, or, as the Goths call it, necrogamy. Under very specific and frankly, very French circumstances, the President of France can personally authorize you to marry your dead fiancé. This isn't some ancient feudal law involving a muddy field and a goat. This is a modern law. It gained traction after a dam burst in 1959, killing over 400 people. One of the victims was a man named André Capra, who died just days before his wedding. His fiancée, Irène Jodard, was so distraught she begged the government to let her marry him anyway. President Charles de Gaulle, probably after a long drag on a cigarette, was like, "Oui, fine, we shall make it a law." But there are rules. You can't just wander into a Parisian morgue and pick out a spouse you like. You have to prove, with serious grounds, that you both clearly intended to get married right before one of you inconveniently, stopped. And the best part, the marriage is legally retroactive to the day before the person died. This means you are instantly, legally a widow or widower. But here's the kicker. You get absolutely no inheritance. You don't get their stuff. You just get the satisfaction, the title. You get all the emotional baggage of being a spouse without any of the financial perks. It's the ultimate long-distance relationship. Number 13, scaring the bride is a crime. Let's talk about wedding pranks. The classics. Filling the getaway car with packing peanuts, switching the salt and the sugar at the reception, or, if you live in South Carolina, dressing up as the ghost of a Confederate general to give the bride a full-blown panic attack. In South Carolina, it is technically a misdemeanor to wear any mask or disguise, or impersonate any person or character for the express purpose of frightening or intimidating any citizen. Now, this law wasn't originally about stopping your cousin from putting a sheet over his head and moaning outside the bridal suite. It's a post-Civil War law, originally part of a larger act aimed at stopping the Ku Klux Klan from doing their whole thing. It was, at its inception, a very serious law designed to stop actual organized terror. But here's the thing about laws. Politicians are terrible at cleaning them up. So, while the original terrifying context has faded, the text itself just stuck around. And now, completely stripped of its historical weight, it just sits on the books, looking completely absurd. This means that today, if your brilliant wedding prank involves, say, dressing up as the Babadook and jumping out of the wedding cake, the bride can theoretically have you arrested. If you decide to ice the groom by hiding a Smirnoff Ice while disguised as a 17th century plague doctor, you're technically committing a crime. The law is a historical artifact that went from preventing societal collapse to preventing your idiot brother-in-law from ruining the champagne toast. Basically, in South Carolina, you are legally obligated to be normal at a wedding. No masks, no ghosts, no surprises. Just good, clean, state-sanctioned fun, or you're getting a fine. Number 12. The 65-year-old cousin loophole. Alright, let's talk about family reunions. They're a wonderful place to catch up on gossip, eat potato salad that's been sitting in the sun for just a little too long, and, in Utah, potentially scout for a spouse. In most of the United States, marrying your first cousin is a legal and social no-no, primarily because of that whole, genetic Jenga thing. We generally try to avoid turning the family tree into a family wreath. But Utah, a state famous for its unique approach to family, has a very specific, sure, why not clause. Utah state law says that, yes, you can marry your first cousin, but only under two very specific conditions. 1, you're both 65 years of age or older, or 2, if you're both at least 55, you can get a judge to sign off on it if one of you is proven to be infertile. Let's just pause and appreciate the legislative genius at work here. The government of Utah sat down and said, look, we know you love your cousin, we get it, but we really don't want you to make any more of you. This law isn't a moral judgment, it's a preemptive strike by the gene pool. It's the state acting as a very awkward, very clinical chaperone for your DNA. Imagine that conversation. Well, honey, we've only got 30 more years to go. Once you hit 65, and assuming my hip replacement holds, we can finally make it official. It's the most bizarrely unromantic long-term relationship goal in human history. The state is essentially saying, you two can be weird, but only if you're too old for that weirdness to have consequences. It's less of a marriage license and more of a we give up, just don't break anything waiver. Number 11, the royal veto. Picture this. You found the one. You're in love. You live in a beautiful, sun-drenched paradise where the average apartment costs more than a small island, and the entire country is basically a single glamorous casino. You're in Monaco. You buy a ring, you get down on one knee, and your partner says yes. Now all you have to do is get permission from the prince. In the tiny, ludicrously wealthy Principality of Monaco, you can't just get married. The Prince of Monaco, currently Prince Albert II, retains the legal right to approve or forbid any marriage of a Monegasque citizen. This isn't just for his own family, the Grimaldis. This is for everyone. If you're a citizen, you have to formally request the sovereign's authorization to wed. If the prince just doesn't like the cut of your fiancé's jib, if he thinks your intended spouse is, say, a person of bad character, or, more likely, just not rich enough to fit the brand, désolé, no marriage for you. This is the ultimate meet-the-parents anxiety. You're not just trying to impress a potential father-in-law, you're trying to impress a literal monarch who controls your legal right to happiness. What do you even wear to that meeting? Yes, Your Serene Highness. My intentions are pure, and my bank statements are, as requested, laminated. It gets even weirder. Historically, the law was also used to prevent Monegasque citizens from marrying each other. Because the country is about the size of a single large airport, everyone was already acquainted. The government had to actively encourage people to marry foreigners just to keep the bloodlines from turning into a corkscrew. It's the only country on earth where the government's official romantic advice was, seriously, go see what they have in Italy. We've seen everyone here. It's not good. Number 10, the mandatory name meld. When most people get married, there's a conversation. Are you going to take my name? Am I taking yours? Are we going to hyphenate and create an unwieldy 14-syllable monster name that will haunt our children for life? It's a choice. But in Japan, it's not a choice. It's a legal requirement. According to Japan's civil code, which dates back to the 19th century, a married couple must legally share the same surname. The law is technically gender neutral. It just says one surname. In theory, the husband could take the wife's name. In practice? Yeah, no. In about 96% of all marriages in Japan, the woman is the one who changes her name. This isn't just a quirky tradition, it's a massive, controversial social issue. For women who are doctors, lawyers, scientists, or, just people who like their own name, this law forces them to legally erase their professional and personal identity. They can sometimes use their maiden name as an alias at work, but on every legal document, passports, driver's licenses, bank accounts, their birth name is gone, replaced by their husbands. The UN has repeatedly told Japan this law is discriminatory. Japanese courts have repeatedly upheld it, claiming it's not unconstitutional because tradition. The argument is that having one family name is crucial for family unity. Critics argue that it's just a relic of a feudal system where women were literally absorbed into the husband's family register. Imagine your government telling you that the only way to prove you're a real family is for one of you to perform a legal magic trick and make your identity disappear. It's the 21st century, and Japan is still enforcing a law that basically says, "Congratulations on your marriage. Now please fill out the paperwork for your own identity theft." Number 9. The 4-strike marriage rule. We need to talk about Kentucky, a state known for bourbon, horses, and apparently a complete lack of faith in your ability to make good life decisions. In most places, if you get divorced, the state just shrugs, stamps your paperwork, and quietly takes bets on how long it'll be before you're back in court. But in Kentucky, they are so convinced you're a romantic disaster that they've put a hard limit on your optimism. In the bluegrass state, it is illegal for a woman to remarry the same man 4 times. Let's just unpack that. 1 time, that's love. 2 times, that's a mistake you're willing to learn from, or, more likely, repeat. 3 times, you're now in a toxic but passionate soap opera and your friends have stopped answering your calls. But 4 times, Kentucky drew a line in the sand and said, "No, absolutely not, we're cutting you off." This law implies that there was, at some point in Kentucky's history, a specific couple who were so bad at being married and so persistent that the legislature had to step in. You have to imagine a judge in a small town just losing his mind. "Mabel Ann, you are not marrying this man again. We've all had enough. I'm making this a law." What's even stranger is the specificity. It's not illegal for a man to remarry the same woman 4 times, just for the woman to. This isn't just a bizarre numerical limit, it's a bizarrely sexist numerical limit. It's a relic from an old-timey, 19th century mindset, where the man was seen as a bad influence, and the woman was a poor, delicate flower who needed the government to save her from her own terrible taste in men. "We have to protect you, ma'am, because you are clearly, pathologically, incapable of not marrying this specific banjo-playing disaster." It's the ultimate state-sponsored, "I told you so." Number 8. The mail-order spouse, military edition. Getting married is all about paperwork, but in most cases you're at least required to be in the same room as the paperwork. You show up, you say the words, you sign the thing. But what if you could get married while you're, say, deployed in a submarine and your partner is climbing a mountain in Tibet? Welcome to Montana, the only state in the US that allows a double proxy marriage. A normal proxy marriage is already weird. That's when one person isn't there and they have a stand-in. This is common for military members. The bride will be there and the groom will be played by his best man, who is legally just a flesh and bone filing extension. But Montana, in its glorious wide-open sky wisdom, looked at that and said, "We can make this weirder." In a double proxy marriage, neither person has to be there. You and your beloved can be on opposite ends of the earth. You just hire 2 random Montanans, literal proxies for hire, who will go to the courthouse for you. They'll stand in front of the judge, say, "I do" at each other on your behalf, sign the papers, and boom, you're married. You could get married in your sleep. You could get married while in a coma. The only catch, one of you has to be an active duty member of the US Armed Forces. This is the most efficient, deeply impersonal, and frankly, hilarious way to tie the knot. It reduces the sacred act of matrimony to a bureaucratic errand. "Honey, did you remember to take out the trash?" "Yes, and I also paid a guy named Gus $500 to marry you for me." We're all set. Our certificate should be in the mail. It's the Amazon Prime of weddings. Click a button and a box containing a new legally binding relative shows up at your door in 2 to 3 business days. Number 7, no wedding for a week. Picture the scene. You're in New Orleans, the music is great, the food is better, and the Sazeracs are flowing. You and your partner are feeling romantic. You decide, right here, right now, that you're going to get married. You run to the courthouse to get a license, ready to hit a 24-hour chapel, and make a beautiful, spontaneous mistake, and the clerk says no. In Louisiana, if you are not a resident of the state, you must purchase your marriage license and then, wait, for 24 hours, the state imposes a mandatory 24-hour cooling-off period on all non-residents. This law is In no uncertain terms, a direct legislative attack on the entire business model of Las Vegas. This is the government of Louisiana grabbing you by the shoulders, shaking you and screaming, "Are you sure? Are you really sure? Go home, have some water, take a nap, and if you still want to marry this person you met at a jazz club 3 hours ago, then fine, we guess." It's an anti-impulsivity law. It's the legal equivalent of your phone asking, "Delete this file permanently," and you having to type yes in a text box. The state is trying to save you from yourself. Think of the sheer number of hurricane-fueled, bourbon-soaked mistakes that must have happened in New Orleans to make this law necessary. The legislature didn't just guess this was a problem, they had data. They saw the spike in annulment requests every Monday after a big festival, and collectively decided to build a 24-hour bureaucratic firewall against bad decisions. So if you're planning a destination wedding in the Big Easy, make sure you factor in an entire day of just sitting there, thinking about your choices. It's not a party until the government says it is. Let's get weirder. Number 6. The 3-week public shaming. If you want to get married in the 21st century, you usually just post a really well-lit photo of a ring on Instagram. Your friends like it. Your one weird aunt comments something political and the algorithm buries it. Done. But if you want to get married in a Church of England church, you have to go full 13th century on it. You have to have your banns read. This is not a suggestion, it's a legal requirement. For 3 consecutive Sundays before your wedding, the vicar has to stand up in front of the entire dozing congregation and announce, "I publish the banns of marriage between your name and your partner's name. If any of you know just cause or impediment why these 2 persons should not be joined together in holy matrimony, ye are to declare it." This is literally the speak now or forever hold your peace moment, but turned into a 3-week subscription service. This law was invented in 1215, a time when the entire population of your village was about 70 people, and checking your partner's background meant asking the local blacksmith if he'd ever seen them turn into a goat. The entire point of the bans was to flush out any secret marriage-destroying information. Is he already married to someone in the next village over? Is she his sister? Is he a ghost? And we still do it, today. In an age of smartphones. This means if you're getting married, you are legally required to give every nosy neighbour, every bitter ex, and every half-senile churchgoer 3 distinct public opportunities to stand up and ruin your entire life. It's like a live-action, 3-episode miniseries of your own relationship drama, where the audience is invited to write the ending. It's the ultimate form of social background check, invented by people who also thought leeching was a viable medical procedure. Number 5, the "are you fun" or too fun clause. In most states, the bar for getting married is incredibly low. Are you both standing? Do you have a pulse? Did you bring $50 in cash? Congratulations. But a few states, like Mississippi, look at your lifestyle choices with a very judgmental eye. In Mississippi, a marriage can be annulled, legally erased like it never happened, if, at the time of the marriage, the other party was a habitual drunkard or habitual user of narcotics, and the other party did not know it. Let's be clear, this isn't about one bad night. This isn't the Delaware Dare we talked about. This is the state giving you a legal exit ramp if you discover that your new spouse's winding down with a glass of wine is actually a winding down with 3 bottles of wine and a suspicious amount of cough syrup. This law creates an amazing unspoken legal burden. You're not only allowed, but encouraged to be a pre-wedding detective. "Honey, why are you asking to see my credit card statements?" "Oh, no reason. Just wondering if your kombucha budget seems high, suspiciously high." It gets even better when you realise this is a one-shot deal. The law is very clear. You only get to use this excuse if you didn't know. If you knew you were marrying someone who thinks vodka is a breakfast food, then congratulations. The state of Mississippi says, you knew what you were getting into, no refunds. This is the only law that essentially holds you accountable for your own bad taste. It's the "you bought the damaged goods at full price, no take-backs" rule of marriage. Number 4, the in-law no-fly zone. Look, we all know that in-laws can be a lot, but in most families the worst it gets is an argument over politics or a passive-aggressive comment about your mashed potatoes. But in many places, like West Virginia, the law assumes your family gatherings are one bad decision away from a very confusing family tree. In West Virginia, the list of people you shalt not marry is extensive. It's not just your mum, your dad, your sister. Oh no. The law explicitly forbids you from marrying your wife's mother, your mother-in-law, your wife's daughter, your stepdaughter, or your wife's grandmother. We have to pause here. This law was not written in a vacuum. Someone, somewhere in West Virginia's history, lost a spouse and immediately looked at their 75-year-old mother-in-law and thought, you know, she's still got it. And it happened so often that they had to write it down. Sir, put down the casserole. She is not your new bride. She is your dead wife's mum. We've been over this. It's a preemptive strike against the absolute worst possible rebound. The law isn't just stopping incest. It's stopping the single most awkward Thanksgiving dinner in human history. And it's not just West Virginia. Many states have these affinity prohibitions. They're telling you, just because you're not related by blood doesn't mean you can't be gross. The law is literally drawing a decency circle around your immediate family, and then drawing another thicker circle around your in-laws, just to be safe. It's the government's way of saying, just go find someone new, please, anyone else, we're begging you. Number 3, the you're not as rich as you said. Refund. Getting married is all about love and trust, and a very, very detailed accounting of your partner's net worth. At least that's what the great state of New York seems to believe. In most places, fraud as grounds for an annulment means something severe, like finding out your spouse is already married to a lighthouse keeper in Maine, or that they are a secret international spy, or that they are, in fact, 3 children in a trench coat. But in New York, the legal definition of fraud is, shall we say, deliciously broad. New York courts have a long, storied history of granting annulments because one party lied about how much money they had. That's right. You didn't just marry a person, you married their projected earnings. You fell in love with their assets. And if you get married, move into their penthouse, which turns out to be a 6th floor walk-up with 3 roommates and a gerbil. You can go to a judge and say, Your Honour, I have been defrauded. He said he was a venture capitalist, but it turns to be he just ventures to the bodega to capitalise on the 2-for-1 sale. This is the only state that so deeply understands and respects the hustle. It legally validates the idea that marrying for money is a legitimate transaction, and if the goods are not as advertised, you are entitled to a full refund. The law isn't just let the buyer beware, it's let the seller be honest about their stock portfolio. This turns your first few dates into a legally binding deposition. When you said, I summer in the Hamptons, did you mean in a beachfront estate, or in my 2004 Honda Civic parked near the Hamptons? It's the ultimate Gold Digger Protection Act, written directly into state law. Number 2, the government-mandated shotgun wedding. This one, folks, is a time capsule of pure distilled chaos. Until 2017, yes, 2017, the state of Arkansas had a law on the books that was the legal equivalent of a 1950s sitcom dad polishing a shotgun. It was called the Bastardy Law, and it was exactly what it sounds like. Here's how it worked. If an unmarried woman had a child, she could go to a justice of the peace and name the father. The man would then be arrested and dragged into court. A judge, or God forbid a jury, would then listen to evidence, which was usually just pointing, and decide if he was in fact the father. If the court decided, yep, that looks like his kid, the man was given a choice, and what a choice it was. Option A, pay a bond to the state of Arkansas, not to exceed $300, which, what? Promising to pay child support. Or, option B, marry the woman, and if you refused both, if you refused to pay the checks notes, $300, or marry the person you just had a kid with, you were found guilty of a misdemeanor and thrown in jail. The state of Arkansas literally legally pointed a gun at your head and said, marry her or else. This wasn't a social pressure, it was a judicial one. You had a judge in a black robe acting as the world's most terrifying matchmaker. Well, son, you can either put a ring on it, or you can put on this orange jumpsuit. You're cool, this court is adjourned. This law wasn't about love or family or even common sense. It was a desperate puritanical attempt to legitimize a child by forcing 2 people, who clearly didn't have their lives figured out, into a legally binding, resent-filled union. It's the only law in history that tried to solve one problem by creating a brand new, much more complicated state-sponsored hostage situation. And here's the grand finale. Number 1, the you broke my heart, now pay me law. We've all been there. You get dumped. It's awful. You spend a week eating ice cream directly from the carton, watching terrible movies, and listening to the same sad song on repeat until your streaming service sends you a wellness check. It's a rite of passage. But in a handful of states, like South Carolina and Mississippi, you have another option. You can sue. Welcome to the insane world of breach of promise to marry, also known as the Balm Laws. This is a real modern-day legal action where you can take your ex-fiancé to civil court for breaking the engagement. This isn't just about getting the ring back. Oh no. This is about damages. You're suing for the emotional distress of being jilted. You're suing for the damage to your reputation and prospects. You are, in the coldest legal terms possible, arguing that your ex breached a verbal contract for a lifetime of you, and now they must pay monetary compensation for their failure to deliver. You can literally stand in front of a judge and argue, Your Honour, this man promised me a future of suburban bliss, 2.5 children, and a shared data plan. By dumping me via text, he has caused me $100,000 in hurt feelings and lost social standing. These laws are an ancient relic from a time when a woman's entire value was tied to her marriageability. If a man promised to marry her and then backed out, she was seen as damaged goods, and her prospects in the marriage market plummeted. So, the law gave her a way to get paid for the economic loss. The fact that this still exists is mind-blowing. It means that in some states, an engagement isn't a romantic intention, it's a legally binding business merger, and if you try to back out, your ex-partner can send you a bill for their own broken heart. It's the ultimate state-sanctioned, I'm telling mum, but instead of mum, you're telling a jury. Humanity's approach to love is weird. But hey, at least we write it all down. Subscribe for more legal reasons to stay single.